Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do some router work on this sun and moon yin and yang design piece. It's a good size, literally 22 inches across, obviously by 22 inches that way. Now I printed my template out. I use an online site called Rasterbaiter. Yes, it's a strange name, I know. And that's the 6 pieces of A4 size. And once it's printed off, there's little margins. You basically just put them all together, bit of sellotape, and I've just cut it out to fit. Now the wood I'm going to use today is oak, I believe. I must say I've done a lot of wooden projects, over 500 plus, and I wouldn't know a pine from an oak to a cherry to a sycamore. So I'm being honest with you. But the guy that dropped me off a 7-foot table a while back, this is a piece here. This is how it started off, and it is a nice thick chunky piece, and it's going to be solid. I've never routed out on this before. I have had a little play down in this bottom left hand corner, and it all seems fine. So I've had a lot of time sanding it down to get it to the wooden thing. But he dropped me a 7-foot table and a 6-foot table, no legs, just the tops. So for free wood, I'm more than happy with that one, so no problem there. I always find free wood is the best wood to work on. So we've printed it out, we've stuck it down with painter's tape, and I've popped underneath, as always, good old carbon paper or graphite paper. You want nice fresh paper. This one's 104-year-old. This one didn't work today, but basically what I have in the video, just to show you guys. So you just pop it underneath there. I like to use a pen, and you would literally just draw around it all. Took quite a while on this one, but for me, it's all part of the process, and I find it just relaxing, drawing out the template as it is when we come to actually route it out. There is other methods. I've seen people glue these straight to the wood and route over the top. I tried it once before, I certainly won't try it again. And I think there's thinners, acetones, where you can print it in reverse, turn that over, lay it down on the wood, and rub the back with a pen, a spoon of some description, and hopefully that will transfer it. I don't know how you would go on with a six pieces like that joined together with acetone. I have no idea. But anyway, for me, good old carbon paper underneath, print it off. That way we can use that template over and over again. I'm actually going to keep hold of this one because a bit further down the line I'd like to cut it out on a scroll saw, basically remove all the white sections. So that should be interesting. We'll keep an eye out on that video a little bit further down the line. So there's all our image now, nicely done on. I like to take 5 minutes and literally shade in the areas that we're going to remove today, which is all the black sections. I just scribble around. You could put crosses on, you could get a marker pen and just put little dots on, just something to mark it. I guarantee you will go away, come back and start removing this section here. Well, that's the end of your project, because that section wants to leave him behind. We want both sides of that, so we're going to take our time with this one. Good thing about these little projects, we can have an hour, put it to one side, start on something else and come back. Not something I normally do. When I do my little projects, I start with one project and I won't do any others until I finish the project in question. Once I've routed out all the shaded areas, we'll give it a nice cleaning up. We will cut it out on a scroll saw eventually. Hopefully you can cut this wood in a full circle. I will be adding a little lip on maybe. We'll see how it's like. We might have a little lip all the way around like so. Because the idea is to incorporate black resin mixed with a black acrylic paint. And we're just going to pour resin into the full section. Just leaving enough so we can still feel out the routed out areas. Or if resin's not your thing, we can just paint the whole thing black and then just sand it all down nicely. It is quite a thick piece of wood and it's very heavy. This would make an ideal tabletop if you were going to go down that line. But you can see it's a good inch plus. I'll just get a tape measure. I'm just curious to see how thick that is. Just give me 2 seconds. Yes, it's 1 inch thick, is that? So at 1 inch, there's a good thickness to it. And it's, like I say, it is heavy. But we shall see how we progress. For routed out purposes, as always for me, little CNC bits. I'm going to use a 20 degree. They come in 15, 20s, 30s. The degree is literally just the angle on the end. Personally myself, once I've gone around with the cleaning out section, I've never left with much of an angle. And that basically, just that little tip there, we can stop it flashing. There we go. So we'll use this to all our lines. Remember, up to the line. I never root out on the line on most of my projects. Only because by the time you use the depth, which will be 3mm, if you've gone down there 3mm on that line, 3mm on that line, you've narrowed that section between. So we want to be up to the line, and we will do the full piece with that. These are CNC bits, carbide bits, I believe they're also called. They are 3.175mm. They will fit a Dremel, no problem, if you want to use them in a Dremel with a router attachment. If not, for me, I have a quarter inch adapter. Just manically, I'm going to close this shutter just to get the light in a little bit better. It looks a bit dark here. Now it's flicking away. Okay, just bear with me. I'm very basic here in my poor little shed in a little spotlight. So nothing fancy. What we see is what we get. So we use a 6.35mm adapter reducer collet. It's basically just a tube with some thin slits in it. And your CNC bit literally slots into there like so. That will now fit your 1/4 inch router. If you've got an 1/2 inch router shank, you also need a bigger adapter. We'll set it to 3mm. 3mm is enough. Basically the thickness of that bit, that was the depth we will set it at. I made a little gauge like so. I know that's 3mm. Like I've just said, it's the same. That is flush with that, so it's the same thickness as that. We'll use that to do all the lines, like I just said. Once we've done the full piece all the way around, we'll remove the CNC bit and pop in a end milling bit. For now, we'll see how these go. If we find we are struggling with these, we'll get a nice fresh one. Obviously one that will fit in between the router out bits that we're going to do. And we'll use that to clear it all out. They have the same size shaft on them, 3.175. So you will use the same adapter. And if you just slot that up there, up to that little barrier. I do find them without barriers now, so if you can't find them with the barrier, don't be concerned. Just basically exactly the same thing. And then we will use that, set it to our 3mm, and clear out all the penciled out areas. Once that's all done, nice tidy up with a Dremel and engraving bits, a bit of sandpaper, nice mouse sander. Then we'll cut it all out, and then we'll be on towards the next stage. Okay, that's enough talking for now. Let's pop our CNC bit into the router and start routing this one out. Right, we made it all the way round with that CNC bit. Quite dusty, this oak wood. It's quite new to me. I did find a lot of the routing out areas were getting quite powdery and full with your dust. Even though I have a little blower on my router, you still get plenty of dust in there. But that doesn't matter. That'll all be cleared out and sorted out at the end. And if I can pick it up without knocking anything over, you can more or less see everything's nicely routed out, he says. Probably the hardest bit was doing that outer circle. And it's not perfect, but remember, we're going to go in and clean this up with an engraving bit, and we'll get it all nice and crispy and there as we can get it. So now I'm just going to remove all these shaded out areas. I did notice as I route myself, I do tend to rub my hands on the wood like that, so it's rubbed away most of it, but I'll have to just keep going back to the template and seeing what bits we need to remove. The last thing we want to do now is come in and remove that section, and ideally we just want the 2 strips in between and all the rest of it. So go slowly, go back to your template and go back to your work and keep an eye on things. So that's it for the CNC bit. We'll get a few more projects after that one for sure. I'm going to pop in an end milling bit. These are all eBay, Amazon for me. I've picked one that's a nice size. We know we're going to fit it in between these already routed out areas. Remember, we're basically going to remove, this will be the biggest area, and I will keep that on there for now. I do have bigger bits, but I'm certainly in no rush. I'll just take my time and nibble away at those. So those are your end milling bits there. You get a pack of 10 for next to nothing, to be honest. We've popped it into our adapter collet. We'll set it to the same depth. I like to remove certain areas like there, so we'll put it in the router, set it to that depth, and basically start removing what we can see of the shaded out areas. If I can just say quickly, just before we just start doing that, I've just noticed, and I didn't mean to mention it beforehand, on the original template, the pattern should I say, you notice there we had a couple of birds in there. 1, 2, 3 birds. I wasn't quite happy with the birds, and there was a section down the bottom here that came out too much for me, so I modified that. We did away with the birds and literally just added a few more stars. I don't know if they're meant to be birds. It's meant to be at night time. There might have been bats, I don't know, but they're not on my piece for sure. So don't be afraid to modify templates. These are just guidelines just to help us out. You can add your own bit. I'll take things off. We'll add an extra coconut, we'll remove one, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, anyway, let's start routing this one out with the clear out. Right, we've made it all the way around with that end milling bit. This has come out really nice. I'm quite pleased, and it's lovely wood to work on. The only issue I did have, and there was 2 of them, one, the actual CNC bit started to get a bit loose in the adapter collet, so keep an eye on your bits. You'll know when it does it because the actual bit itself will start cutting deeper. Now in my mind, I think once a bit comes loose, it will disappear into the router, but with the force of the spinning motion, it actually makes it deeper. I don't know if you can see it there, maybe not. Let's see if I can turn this round for you. 2 seconds. And you can just see there, we've gone down a little bit deeper. We caught it in time, and you could sand that down, no problem. It's not going to affect me because we are going to cover all that with black resin. And then the other thing I've had on this one, and it's a first for me, I must admit, we've had some kind of burrowing beetle at one time, should I say, and it's left itself a little track in there. Look, there again, we've got lucky because that will all be filled in with resin and we'll cover that completely. But there's been something that's gnawed through there in the past, and that actually goes underneath there. Get a bit nearer. So that's nothing to do with my routing. That is just something that's probably lived in the wood many, many moons ago. Right, for now we're going to cut it out on a scroll saw. Let me just put it around the right way, not that it matters. I'm actually going to cut it out the circle as it is. I've just made myself a little device. Normally if this was outset, meaning this carving here will be slightly higher, I normally have a little washer. You can put a washer on there and just go around with your washer and pencil, and that will make you a nice line. Obviously we've got nothing to put the washer again, so I've just made this little piece of wood here, just magic moment in my mind. So I've cut that to fit. So that bit there fits down there inside that, and that will just slide round, as you can see from that. And I've worked out the width I want, and I've also cut a little groove in there just with a sanding burr, just for the little pencil to sit in. You could tape that to that, you could drill the pencil and fasten it to it, but for me it's just a one-off piece, just so we can make this little line here like so. So it's just a simple case of popping your piece of wood on there, pressing the pencil against it nicely, and literally just going round like so. And hopefully we'll get all the way round. You get the general idea from that, and you can see we're just about, what can you see? Just about see. We've made a nice frame. Oh, we've turned it round again, haven't I? We've made a nice frame there, look, all the way round. And that's a nice enough line for us to follow with our scroll saw. I'll complete this, and then when we come back, we'll be ready for cutting it out on the scroll saw. Right, so we've made our framework all the way around. We've got a nice line to follow. That worked out fine with that little piece of wood there. We'll certainly use something similar in the future. Now we're going to cut it out first, and then we'll come in and give it a nice tidy up. Just before we do cut it out, I'll just show you what I'm going to use for tidying up. Good old sandpaper, that always comes in handy. Make a nice little shape like so, and that's going to be ideal, just getting inside those lines. What I want to try and do is just round them off, not slightly, just so they're not too sharp. We're not going to overfill this with resin. Once the resin goes in, you still have to go over with your fingers, and you can tell it's routed out. Another option is you can overfill this deliberately with resin, sand it all nice and flush, and then put your clear resin over the top, making it really nice. This would make an ideal tabletop. It's certainly heavy enough to be a tabletop, and that project would be another option. But for me, I'm just basically just going to fill in the background with black resin. You can use black paint if it's not your thing, resin. And so obviously I don't want too much sharp edges, so we'll clean up with that. I also like to use these engraving bits, just cheap eBay special. You'll get a pack of 30 for next to nothing. I like to get one with a nice flat bottom one on. Pop that into a flexi cable. I cannot recommend these enough. These simply just attach to your Dremel. Cheap eBay specials. We'll pop that in there, and that will be ideal to go round and give it a nice cleaning up. And then also just get rid of all our pencil lines. We'll come with a little mouse sander and then just round off those edges slightly. Before that though, we are going to cut out on a scroll saw. For me, you might get away with a bandsaw with this one because it's not too much of a tight circle, if that makes sense. But there are three types of blade. Just very quickly, there's a standard pin blade like that. All your blades want to feel smooth on the way down, so you just rub your thumb down nice and smooth, and on the way up you want to feel that roughness. That way you know you've got your teeth in the wrong way, the right way should I say, on your saw. Should you put it in the wrong way, it will work, but as the teeth come up, it will bring all the dust and all the paper to the top, so your lines won't be as clear. So you know you've got it in the wrong way. Once you turn it around, it's not as bad. And obviously you'll have a little blower on your scroll saw. This would work on this one perfectly, because it is one little circle, no problem whatsoever. They do a pinless blade. There's no pins on those. These are ideal for detailed work. It's quite a thin blade as this one, for this big chunky wood. It's 1 inch thick oak, remember, so we'll see how we get on. For me personally, spiral blade for me, good old spirals. They cut in any direction, so I can basically just start there and just feed the wood round, and which will get that round. Hopefully it's a 22-inch. My saw is only a 16 on mine, so we're gonna have fun and games with that. And unfortunately, my old Draper scroll saw, I have to use these adapter clamps. It's okay for this one because it's just be one cut. But if we were cutting out all these inner sections, you'd have to do your pilot hole, pop that under, put your clamp on, put the clamp at the bottom, using an Allen key to tighten it up, and it can be a bit soul destroying, but it is what it is. So spiral pegas number 5 for me. I've not cut this out with a spiral blade, I will be honest with you. I've not tried this at all. Okay, so we've gone all the way around with the Pegas number 5 spiral blade. That did take some cutting out, I must admit. It was a slow processing, and by the time I'd actually cut it out, the table on my scroll saw had tilted slightly, so it's not even a straight edge on. The weight of the wood actually just tilted it, but it doesn't matter, it's all good. We've gone all the way around, as you can see from that, and we've took off the little knobblies off the back with a bit of sandpaper, and then obviously we went round with one of those engraving bits on the flexi cable. Just give it all a nice cleaning out. There wouldn't be a lot. Remember, by the time we've got 3/4 of resin filled in this, we'll just to say see the top of the wood, and it will be enough just so you can still feel it. Remember, you could overfill and sand it all flush if you wanted to. So cleaned out with the end milling bits, and then we come in with a little bit of sandpaper. Just made a little tube effect like so. That's just enough. As you're doing that, you're just slightly, very slightly, just taking that edge off each section of wood as we're going round. We've left all our little stars and little bits and bobs in the skies, as you can see. So now it's just, normally at this stage I would come in with boiled linseed oil and just darken it down. Just want to get these grains to stand out a bit better. But you might notice on this right hand side here, slightly darker. I'll just come straight in with some varnish. Doesn't matter what we use, get one that's full. So we're just going to spray this with varnish straight away, and I know for a fact it will darken down the wood like so. And I'll do this 2 or 3 times. One reason being, I like a nice shine on my wood, just enough to say we've made the effort. And 2, hopefully, I've not used resin on oak before, so this is all new to me. I'm hoping with this varnish, we're going to seal this wood and stop any more bubbles, and hopefully stop the resin from bleeding into those side walls. You imagine that wood being like straws. You can see the grain as it runs. We've cut into that now. So when you put your paint in or resin, we'll basically fill in the end of those straws. And then when you sand it down, you just want to have a nice crispy edge. So you want to make sure you seal it with something. There is wood sealers out there. You can purchase wood sealers and literally just brush it all on. And then once it's dried, hopefully it's sealed all those side walls in. I'll go outside now and get a bit of fresh air on this. We'll do all the sides as well. Give it 3 or 4 coats. Once it's all nicely dry, we're going to find some resin. I believe I've got enough left just to do this project. And then we're just going to fill it in. And then we'll be heading towards the finishing line. Okay, that's all our varnish, nicely dried. It's actually the day afterwards, and hopefully you might just to see. The only lighting I use at the moment is the flashlight on my mobile phone, but you just see there, look, just enough to say we've got a nice shine on there, and hopefully we've sealed in all the side walls of the routed out areas. The end bits aren't so clever. You probably want 2 or 3 more coats of varnish on there. I was going to paint that black at one time, but I'm going to leave it. It's near enough for what I need. So the next stage now is literally we're just going to fill this in with black resin, just so the black and the wood contrast against each other. At one time we're going to paint all this white, so that it really was a black and white, but I'm quite liking the grains on this wood, so we're going to leave it. Another option I had this morning, a quick flash, was to actually paint it all, so you would have a nice moon, orange, yellow moon with all the yellow stars, white snow on the mountains, green hills, blue water down here with the waves, and the sun coming in with the yellow rays and stuff. I just think it might be a little bit too much. Sometimes you need to just step back, stick to your original plan. I'm just going to go nice black resin, just enough, remember, once it's all in and it's nicely curing, we still want to be able to feel those routed out areas. So no over filling on this one completely, so nice and steady. Okay, let's go and find some resin. Vista 1 resin today, mixed with black acrylic paint. It's resin time. Unfortunately, I can't fit the full project in on my little setup as regards to my mobile phone. It's actually tied up with a bit of shoelace, and it just enough to come down here. And no matter how much I zoom out, I just can't get everything in. So we're going to have to persevere with this one, but we'll move it about as we go on, and as we basically fill it all in with our black resin. You can still see that little shine there, look. Hopefully we've sealed it all in nicely. Now the resin today is Vista 1 for me. I've used 3 or 4 different types, but I'm quite happy with Vista 1. Like all your resins, you get A, your resin, B, your hardener or catalyst, and you basically mix the two together. Just watch your resins when you pick which one you want to use. This is a 1-to-1, so by volume. So whatever we use of A, the resin, we want exactly the same amount of B, the hardener, and basically mix the two together. Some resins are 2-to-1, 3-to-1. I think there's even higher than that. Some resins you will mix by weight, so you will need little scales and weigh off so much in one, so much in the other. So just watch your, and some resins are deep pour resins that are designed for up to 2 inches at a time. These are just small resins, so only got 1/4 inch plus, so we can only mix small amounts at a time. Should you mix too much resin, you can get what they call a flash cure. Basically, if you filled that up with resin and you're mixing it around, it can actually just set as you're doing it. Just too much chemical reaction, is just too much going on. It gets too hot and just sets solid as you're mixing it. So I'd rather do small amounts. These plastic cups are fantastic. You see there, they've got little grooves on the side. So I'll have A, my resin. I've just counted up 6 for the resin. And obviously we've done exactly the same with B, the hardener, and I've counted up 6 with that. So we'll fill these two up with the 2 little A and B's as we need them. Mix it all together. And then we'll pop a bit of just black acrylic paint. We'll put so much in, give it a mix around. If it wants to be a bit darker should I say, we'll pop a bit more in. And then basically we're just going to fill it all in with the black resin. Now for mixing wise, I'll just use this cheap kids parties knife and forks. They're ideal because they have a nice little groove in the back there. And once we've done our mixing, that's going to be enough for me just to gently feed that down in between each section. It's going to be a slow process, and hopefully, I'm saying, we'll have enough resin to complete it. There's different methods. I've tried these petite things, and it is possible to cut the end off slightly and then squeeze that in there. It's just too slow for me, so that didn't quite work. And I'm sure you'll get the same effect with a nice syringe there. Sure, you could suck that up and feed that in exactly the same way. Just too much effort involved, to be honest. I'd rather just put my resin in there, and if we can't get it in there, we'll get to either end, and I'll just use a nice cocktail stick and just gently feed it across like so. Once we've done it all, we'll get a nice lighter and we'll skim over it just to remove all the bubbles. We will show you that nearer the time. Okay, I'll mix our A, the resin, with our bee, the hardener, off camera, and then when we come back, we'll add a bit of acrylic paint, mix it up, and basically just start filling this one in. Okay, there's all our resin nicely mixed up. Don't think we need to go any further with that. Now we're just popping in our acrylic paints. There's powders, inks, whatever you prefer, but I've had no issues. Just a dolloping like that, nothing fantastic. And we can mix it round. And if it's not dark enough, I always just pop a bit more in. There is certain ratios, they always say don't put more than 10% of your resin mix colour wise into the resin. But I'll be honest with you, and please don't follow by my example, I'll just put it in till it looks like it's near enough what I need. And I've never had any issues. I've never had any resin that hasn't cured or set on me so far, he says, hopefully. Remember, I've not used resin in this oak wood before, so this might not be a total disaster. We'll see if that varnish has sealed it all up nicely. What I want to do with this, because I will be mixing maybe 2 or 3 batches, and a little bit of resin goes a long way. I will just randomly just put it anyway. Then when we come to mixing our next one, if the blacks aren't perfect, we can blend it in, and it won't look as daft, should I say, as having a really jet black, maybe not as black towards the bottom. So we will put bits anyway, and I will speed things up because it's the same process, and it's going to be very slow getting in between these lines and stuff. So we can drop a bit on the project. Remember, we've got our little scoop at the end here. If that looks dark enough, we could put a little bit in like so if we wanted to speed things up. That don't look too bad at that. I think I might be happy with that, to be honest. So we can drop a bit down there as well. Now it will flow very slowly, and to help it on its way, we'll just get a little cocktail stick like that and feed it about. And we can, these tight areas, you can see it on there. I do apologise for not getting the full project in. Like I say, we can drop bits in there and go nice and slowly inside there like so. Okay, we get it from that, and there's our little cocktail stick, just to help it into the corner, like so. Remember, we're not going to fill it to the top, so we'll see how we go on. Okay, we'll speed things up and fill it in as we go along, and hopefully when we come back, we'll go over our little lighter, and then we'll put it to one side. We're back in a minute. Right, we've got that all done now. You might just get it in. If I can lift it up, you can see from that we've gone all the way around with that resin. Excuse me, I've got a sore throat. That's nothing to do with the resin, but please put your gloves on, proper resin mask, and plenty of ventilation. Please don't follow my way of doing things. Now just get yourself a lighter, and we just want to skim over the top all the way around, and I'll come back in 5 minutes and literally do this again, and you'll be able to see all those bubbles just nicely disappearing. So that's it. That's all we can do for now. We'll put this to one side, get a nice cover for it, and we'll come back in 24 to 48 hours and we'll see what we finished up with. See you soon. Okay, that's it. This little project is finished. It's roughly about 24 hours later. That resin's cured nicely. Personally, I would leave it for another 2 or 3 days. In some resin groups and resin manufacturers, they say it takes up to 51 days to fully cure. I don't think that's a bit over the top myself, but each to their own, as we say. And you can see from that, that's all nicely solid. Everything's nicely covered. If I was going to be picky, I'm sure I could find a couple of little dust speckles on there. But I did mention about covering it all up with something. As long as we've got no flies or anything. We've covered in that little beetle trap there, whatever it was at the time. So that's definitely no more. And that's it. That's just all nicely filled in. We basically covered it all up. Took about 3 little mixers. We had plenty of time. It was nice and cool yesterday, so it didn't go off too quickly. And whatever I had left over, I just simply just went round and dotted it about and just let it find its own level. And then remember, we've got a nice lighter just to go over the top, and that helps release all those little bubbles. And we have no bubbles in this. It's all sealed nicely. The varnish did its job. We've got no bleed into that wood. I don't know if I can get it close enough for you to see. Maybe. Here we go anyway. So nothing's bled in. Nice crisp lines. So we've got no problem with that. This oak wood, I say it's oak. I'm only going on what the person dropped it off. He dropped me off 2 nice 7-foot tables. And these are some oak tables for you, tabletops. So as far as I'm concerned, it's oak. And it carves out really nice. It's 1 inch thick. And it measures in 23 inches. Obviously by 23 inches. And that's it. We are done. So just to recap quickly, we used those lovely CNC bits to do all the lines with. And then we came back with the end milling bits. These are all at eBay or Amazon. I will put links in the description. And then we sprayed it all with any varnish I could find. I think I started off on the yacht varnish and finished up on this polyurethane varnish, just to finish it off. And then we mixed Vista 1 resin. Remember, 2 parts of resin, A and B, by volume, 1 to 1, just mixed together. And we used just Crawford and black acrylic paints to mix in for our colours. Poured it all in. We left it literally 24 hours. And that's it. This little project is finished. Now, it is quite an heavy piece. This would make an ideal tabletop if you want to put some little tripod metal legs underneath or something like that. You could actually overfilled this, sanded it down and put nice clear resin over the old piece. Made a nice table. Furniture's not my thing. I would just do little art projects. Now, for hanging purposes, I have routed out a big slit in the back, if you can find it. Just there. Just 1 second, please. Just see that big slit there. That's 3/4 of an inch deep. Now that might be enough to hang it up. Personally myself, a couple of hooks and a wire certainly might be the better option. Just for the weight of it all and stuff like that. So that's it. We are finished. So it's the sun and moon yin and yang design, routed out on recycled oak and inlaid with resin mixed with acrylic paints. Just have a go. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much for watching.